There are many things that we can learn from today's guest. To do what excites you, even if you're bad at it at the beginning, betting on yourself, and learning how to value both yourself and your time. Tom Stefaniuk has been a friend of mine since high school, and we connected through mutual friends, a love of basketball, and of sneakers. And Tom's been able to turn that love of sneakers into a full time career in terms of content creation. He started with a sneaker related YouTube channel and now has branched off into a successful merchandise business, and most recently, starting to help other people achieve the same things he has through a consulting agency. Tom is legitimately one of the most intelligent people that I know, and I always love sharing a conversation with him. And today is no different. So here we go. Here is a conversation with Tom Stefaniuk. I am now joined by the man that I made fun of in high school to selling his merch at conventions, Tom Stefaniuk. Tom, how are you today?
I mean, he still makes fun of me now, but
You're not
I'm
wrong.
doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a good day, and I'm looking forward to another productive conversation. For
Beautiful.
those of you that may not know Tom, Tom is a full-time content creator, mainly on YouTube, in the kind of the sneaker slash lifestyle niche, but does a whole lot more kind of beyond the scenes. Is that a decent summary of yourself there, Tom?
Yeah, you summed it up decently.
And what I wanted to kind of get out of this conversation was, I don't know even if this might be the first question I should start with was, did you ever predict that what you started back in, I think this kind of the second half of grade 11 would turn into the lifestyle you live now?
Did I predict then that it would happen? No, absolutely not. But I think as you see the trajectory of what you're doing shift, you sort of shift your predictions, I guess.
Mm.
So yeah, when I started doing YouTube, I was just making videos for fun. And then, when I made $100 in a month, I shifted my projections to, oh, well, if I can make 100, I could make 500. And
Mm.
then once I made $500 in a month, then your projections shift again. So not when I started, but definitely, it's somewhere that I envisioned trying to get to.
What was the time period of the $100 in a month or $500 in a month?
Geez. So it took me 3.5 months when I started YouTube to get 100 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind that's, I didn't have Twitter, I didn't have Instagram, I didn't have anywhere to push
Yeah, yeah.
people. Like it was purely through people by happenstance finding my channel. And I want to say it probably took around a year to 14 months to the point where I was consistently getting $100 or $150 check in the mail every single month. And then after that, probably only another 6 months. So let's call it a year and a half to where I was consistently getting $500, $600 a month off of YouTube.
And that would have put the time frame around September after graduation, correct?
Yeah, right around there. That's probably pretty close if I had to guess.
So you may not guess this, but Tom is actually a very intelligent young man.
Oh, I know. I don't guess it either some days,
And
but
you started
apparently it's
off
true.
you started off going what you call it, the traditional route of going through school. And it took you exactly how long to figure out that you weren't going to continue doing school?
Oh boy. See, I've sort of flip-flop back and forth on whether this is a badge of honor or a mark of embarrassment on my life decisions. But I dropped out of university after 3.5 weeks. So
See,
I
I
really
thought it was
gave it a
two,
fair shot.
so I thought it
No,
was
it was
two. So
three and a
you're
half weeks.
you're impressing me already.
Yeah, I did 75% more university than you thought I did. Uh, I didn't have some grand noble goal to go out and conquer the world. I just didn't enjoy university and didn't know what I
Mm.
wanted to do. So I dropped out after 3.5 weeks. Oh my goodness.
And like obviously I know your background. Your dad's like a high level professional. What dynamic did that add into the equation?
Okay, so that is a good question. So yeah, my dad's a lawyer, and by no fault of his own, I think it's for wanting his kids to be set up nicely for the future. He's very like go to school, get an education,
Mm.
like get a job type stuff. um I'm sure most people can relate to their parents being like that. And I didn't tell him out of sheer terror that I had dropped out of university.
Oh, really?
So my friend was driving me to school because we had the same class schedule. So I told him, "Hey, you don't need to pick me up." But I still continued to wake up at the same time that I was waking up. I still continued to like have a shower, get ready, get dressed, eat breakfast. So my dad thought I was getting ready, and then I'd go sit in the basement until he left for work for probably a month and a half because I was terrified to tell him. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'd wake up at like 6:15 in the morning, get ready, and then sit in the basement for 45 minutes.
I never heard that story. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so then he asked how midterms were going, and I was like, "This ruse has come to an end." And I told him, and he was not the happiest fellow. Um, I don't
Shocking.
remember what his reaction was, but he definitely was not thrilled. And then he tried to. He was like, "Okay, next semester you're going back to school," and that didn't happen. And here we are. So
And I know there's even like there's always been no, I mean, when I'm around, at least a note of jest between you and your dad, of your dad not almost accusing you of not having a real job, or like still trying to figure out what you do.
I think that's shifted. I finally won that
I
battle.
was about to ask if that was if there came a time when he's now somewhat understood what goes on.
Yeah, this year when he said, "Whoa, you're gonna make more than me this year," I think he I think he stopped.
Yeah.
Uh,
That'll do it.
yeah. So but there was definitely that sentiment. More so with my like extended family, like my aunts
Mm,
and uncles, where every time I'd see them at family gatherings, they'd be like, "So, when are you gonna go to college, or are you looking for a job or anything like that?" And I mean, I
yeah.
don't blame them.
Yep.
You're 50 years old, you don't really understand the potential that the internet has to the same extent that someone our age does. So I
Yeah.
don't blame them, but that's for the most part stopped now, which is definitely good.
Yeah. The so just to backtrack just a little bit. Um, Obviously you had a passion at the time for sneakers and you're making what you're passionate about. What were some of the other factors that went into your decision of I can do other than getting a check that like I can do this at a full-time capacity?
Um, I think one thing that I really enjoyed from it was being able to connect with all these other
Mm,
people online that I enjoyed watching and I thought were cool people.
yeah.
And through doing that, I got to, first I'd meet them online and on Twitter, and we'd have little Google Hangouts and talk with each other before Zoom was a thing. And I get to meet these people that I thought were really cool through that avenue, and then eventually that led to going to different events and meeting these people in real life and hanging out with them. And now some of my best friends are people that I've met through avenues like that. So outside of wanting it to become a full-time career, that was definitely something that really motivated me.
Mm,
And then also it's just fun, like
yeah.
whether it's your full-time job or not. Obviously it varies in how often you're doing it at that point, but you get to wake up every day and just go do something enjoyable. So
Mm.
outside of getting paid for it, it's not bad.
Now, like to the person who's watching this, maybe it's a high school kid who's like, I want to do YouTube. I want to become. I want to make my income off of the internet.
Mhm.
Like as maybe a more broad statement. If you had like three things that you were going to tell that kid, that 16-year-old who's all gung ho about this idea of making money from the internet, what would those three things be?
Okay. First, you need to establish what you can do, say, or talk about that most people can't
Mm,
or don't want to.
yep.
Um, so that's what you're going to base your content around, because sure, it's great to, you know, do something that you think is enjoyable, but if everyone else is doing it, you're not going to really establish much of a niche for yourself there. So find something that is unique to you. And then make sure you're really, really, really consistent with it
Mm,
at whatever pace you want to be consistent. Whether that's, let's videos, blogs, products, whatever, whether that's releasing one video a week or one product a month or one blog post a day, but make sure there's a rhythm to it so people know what to expect.
mm,
And then be your own biggest critic. I think that's one thing that people struggle with is that they're not prepared to admit when what they're doing is subpar or inadequate.
mm.
And that's something I think is pretty pivotal in being your own boss, because no one is going to tell you this isn't good enough, and you're never going to get fired. You're just going to sort of float around in mediocrity until you realize that what you're doing isn't good enough.
Oh, I like that. That ends it's actionable. It's and from or you have a friend group that harasses you
Ruthlessly torments
constantly
me.
because at the time your videos were of maybe a standard that now you'd look back on and laugh at.
Oh yeah, like I wouldn't laugh at them because I know where I was at that point, but they're not good.
Fair. Yeah,
They're
fair.
definitely not good. Like this was from, I literally had never taken any sort of class on how to edit even the most basic video. I was using Windows Movie Maker, which is just a terrible program and no one should ever use.
Truly.
Um, and I just didn't know what I was doing. So it was quite literally trial and error. I
Yeah,
had
yeah.
never, ever, 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 not even once for fun, edited a video in my life until I uploaded my first YouTube video. So it was very figuring things out at the time. But yeah, they were bad.
A distinct salmon color. So one thing that I've found interesting and what I admire about you in terms of your ability to continue to grow is not necessarily the term, not growth in the fact of you've exploded into this multi-million subscriber YouTube channel. But what from like our discussions and whatnot, you've done a really great job of monetizing the following that you have.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if there was what you thought the reason behind that would be compared to channels of roughly the same size or bigger not receiving that same monetization.
Yeah, so not to toot my own horn, but that's definitely something that I'm good at, and
Yeah.
that's why we've actually started helping other creators
Mhm.
try and facilitate that same revenue for their platforms. But I think something that people just don't realize is they don't get their reach and their scope and their
Mhm.
influence. And sure, they see the numbers on the screen, but it doesn't really equate to the true value of their reach, right? And you see people do sponsored videos all the time, and they'll take the check and they'll never really think twice about it. But ask yourself this: if a brand is consistently every single month or every single 2 weeks going to hand you a $5,000 check for promoting your product, how much money do you think they're making off of it?
Mhm.
I guarantee you it's more than $5,000, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that was sort of the thought process that led me into not that I don't do sponsored videos, but led me into creating my own product and my own direct route for monetization for my core audience that wants to, purchase goods from me and, buy a T-shirt or a water bottle or whatever the case may be,
Yeah, yeah.
of drawing in this direct line of sales instead of being sort of the intermediary or salesman between a brand and my audience.
Yeah, it makes and if do you think there's a relation between that aspect on the business side of things and just kind of how you value your time in your personal life?
Elaborate. I don't quite understand.
So from what I gather from what you're saying, people don't understand like their reach, their scope, how people are profiting kind of off of them in terms of business, where
Hmm.
a company is giving them $5,000 every single month, and it's kind of like the what more could there be or what more could we get. From what I've gathered, it made you at least at the beginning be very selective um, in what brands you allowed to come into your videos, or the fact that you kind of knew your value and you wouldn't budge off of that
Yeah,
number.
absolutely. I'd say the same about most creators is that people aren't going to work with a brand that they don't legitimately like.
Mhm.
I could have a lot more money right now and be promoting products that I think are complete garbage because everyone gets emails for a whole bunch of products that just aren't good. And who knows, maybe they are good, but they're not something that I'd ever use, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I get all these emails for like CBD oils and stuff,
Mhm.
and they pay very well, but I'd never use that in my life and wouldn't. So that's not something I'm going to promote to my audience. Whether it's a good product or not, it's just not something that I use. So I think most creators do draw that distinction. Um, And then I think in terms of knowing your value and making sure you're getting your money's worth, some people, most people, I'd say, just are so conflict adverse. Like
Mm,
they just hate that butting heads with someone being like, no, I want this. No, I want this. And if someone lowballs you and if you can avoid having a conflict with them, and not that it has to be in a mean conflict or a malicious conflict, but just, a disagreement or a debate on how much you're getting paid, I think people will do almost anything to avoid that, even if it's taking a number that's way lower than they should be, right? Whereas
yeah,
I sort of love arguing, so I'm more than happy to do
that is an understatement.
it.
No, so like that's what the previous question was just kind of about was um, transferring that thought process of like business in terms of that you explained it perfectly of people being conflict averse, so they'll do things in their personal life or go along with things because they don't want to have that conflict with people.
Oh, so you're saying how has that shifted my personal life?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a lot less friends than I could.
Hmm. No, no, that's fair.
um, I don't know. I'll say pretty much any and all of my opinions to anyone I'm speaking with. I don't really hold anything back for fear of not being liked.
Mhm.
Basically, the way that I see it is people have already decided whether they like you or don't like you based on their own opinions. They
Mhm.
might not just know it yet, right? So if I have one political opinion and someone thinks anyone that has that political opinion is bad, whether I've told it to them or not, they already don't like me.
Mhm.
So I don't really see it as a loss for me to tell them that I feel that way because they already didn't like me. They just weren't aware of it yet.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as you've matured, I think at least from the outside looking in as your friend, it seems you're more at peace with that fact that not everyone of not trying you're not going to please everybody all
I
the
mean, hey,
time.
there's 8 billion people on Earth. As long as I can please like five or six, I think I'm good.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You have me right now, and that's a good starting point at least. Kind of to wrap things up. I was kind of curious. Obviously, you're now in Toronto currently.
Yes.
You've lived in New York, um, and we touch base kind of somewhat infrequently from time to time. What's a day in the life look like right now?
Good question. I mean, it's definitely a little bit different with COVID happening this year, unfortunately. But I'd say average day, I sort of wake up early morning, depending on the day, anywhere from like 6:30 to 7-ish. I usually like to read a book in the morning. I'll go out for a walk in the morning, and then get started on work around 9 in the morning. Basically, that entails doing a lot of emails and phone calls. In the afternoon, I'll usually, if I'm filming a video that day, I'll film it in the afternoon. Um, and then more emails and phone calls. And generally, if I'm going to be doing some social stuff, hanging out with friends, that's usually reserved for the evening. So it's a busy day, but what I like is it's all on my schedule and it's,
Mm,
stuff that I'm choosing to do. Obviously, just like anyone, like, if you're an athlete, do you really want to wake up at 6 in the morning and shoot 500 jump shots? Not really. But you realize that it's, going to benefit you in the long term. So even though I might not be delighted to do some things that I do on a day-to-day basis, I still realize that, it's for the better. And I guess as a result of that, I enjoy doing most things I do.
I like it. Last question. You have to pick an all-time 3-on-3 Boston Celtics team off the top of your head. Who's it
Just
gonna be?
just one set of three.
One set of three.
Is there a 3-point line?
Yes.
Is it FIBA rules?
FIBA rules.
Okay, so we don't have to. How does that work? We don't have to clear it then?
You don't have to check ball after a made
Oh,
basket.
we don't have to check ball. Okay, so we want speed and endurance. So Kendrick Perkins is out of there, unfortunately, as a result of that. Um, All-time Celtics. So there's a 3-point line. So that excludes, the majority of great Celtics because they just weren't really shooting threes. So Larry Bird's got to be in there. That's sort of
Mhm.
a
I think he's
given.
a great 3-on-3 player.
Yeah, I think he'd be very good. He's tall. He's like 6'9", so covers all the bases. Um, I think, I mean, this is definitely a reach, but because there's been so many great Celtics players, but I think you want to probably put Jason Tatum in there.
It's
I
fair.
think he's probably up there in terms of getting his own shot in terms of Celtics,
Yep.
especially in the last 30 years. There's not too many individually talented offensive players. So Larry Bird, Jason Tatum, and you know what? Let's just throw in a Kevin Garnett for some tenacity and personality.
That's who I was gonna pick as your third too. I think
Yeah.
Paul Pierce may have something to say about individually talented offensive players.
Well, I mean, he has a lot to say about everything lately.
He does have a lot to say about everything. Anyways, Tom, it was a pleasure catching up. I appreciate your time, and have a great rest of the day, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Bye, guys.